over the lonely waves, the silent ones. On the shifting sands, the story written by forbidden feet. In the nomadic sky, solitary wings, and a lens that spies and probes. In the jungle depths, the enemy, 36,000 strong. In our hands, shreds for evaluation. Unrelated items for conjecture. Implements of formulation. Trivia times mass squared equals victory on Bougainville. We are gathering intelligence, drawing the death plan for an island. Here is your host, General Holland M. Smith, former Commanding General, Fleet Marine Force, Pacific Area, United States Marine Corps. General Smith, was it possible to bypass the island of Bougainville?
No, Bougainville could not be bypassed. In May of 1943, our growing air and naval strength forced the Imperial Japanese High Command to reevaluate its strategy. Our initial successes at Guadalcanal, Tulagi, and New Georgia in the southern Solomons pointed our intent to fight our way up the inland route past New Guinea, the Marianas, Philippines, and into the so-called home islands of Iwo Jima and Okinawa. As a countermeasure, they elected to maintain a defense line stretching from the Aleutians through Wake, the Marshalls, Gilberts, Ocean, Nauru, and the Bismarck. To hold this perimeter, they assigned the combined fleet for mobile defense with orders to engage on sight any and all American land and air units.
And since the southern key strong point in this defense system was Rabaul,
but the Japanese disposition of their airfields enabled them to intercept our planes and deflect our potential. Because of its strategic location, there was never any doubt that we would fight the Japanese for the island of Bougainville. It was inevitable.
For 18 months, the Japanese have built and fortified. For 18 months, we have struggled for a foothold. Now the Russells, Southern Solomons, and parts of New Guinea lie behind us, in our possession. From our forward bases, American bombers arm for a strike at Rabaul. Warned by observers, the Japanese clear their fields, send a massive armada to intercept. guns of our own. And with a sky full of angry lead, it is inevitable. Some of our planes are shot down. When history has repeated itself and once again we are free, the sky ahead blossoms with still more greeters, this time from Bonus and Buka airfields on northern Bougainville. Those who get through are consoled by the knowledge that the planes from only 6 more fields, Rapopo, Tubera, Ranakanao, and Lakunai on New Britain, and Namatanai and Borpop on New Ireland, stand between us and our target, Rabaul.
Such a situation was intolerable. We had to neutralize and capture those airfields. We had to turn them against the enemy, and that meant we had to go in and take them the hard way, by amphibious assault. Much before the battle at Guadalcanal, the Joint Chiefs of Staff in the Pacific were planning the battle for Rabaul, of which Bougainville was a part. South of the island lie the Shortlands, logical attack point for invasion. But to oppose the entrenched enemy would mean a great loss of lives, equipment, and reserve strength. Enemy strength by the thousand was concentrated around the airfield. Where then could we strike, secure a foothold, fill an airfield, and dig in?
Choiseul Island, south and east of Bougainville. Logical, and therefore to be expected by the enemy. Furthermore, it will delay the entire Solomon's campaign. Moreover, from Choiseul, our fighter planes do not have the range to protect our bombers to Rabaul and return. Re-evaluation.
Seize and hold the Treasury Islands, northern Empress Augusta Bay, and construct airfields there. Seize and hold Choiseul Bay area. Install radar, staging, and PT points thereat.
Objection. Aerial reconnaissance reveals that Buka is beyond fighter-bomber escort range. Kahili is within range, but is too strongly defended. It would cost more lives to take it than its strategic worth. The Shortlands have narrow beaches completely unsuitable for a landing under heavy resistance. Further objection. Any approach to invasion on the east coast will lengthen and delay expose our inadequate surface tonnage to greater possibility of attack, and remove it from retreat to friendly air cover in case of naval action with the Japanese 8th Fleet.
The final analysis read, tactical and logistical considerations fix Empress Augusta Bay on the west coast of Bougainville as our final objective.
Intelligence units go into operation on a scale heretofore impossible. Ground units transported by submarine to suitable landing points on Mono and Sterling Island in the Treasury Group. Others will proceed by PT boat to Choiseul Island. Still, if no land contemplated there.
Good old American friend. If the Japanese find evidence of our presence, they will misinterpret our intentions. We will use Choiseul as a feint to deliver the knockout blow elsewhere. Prime patrols will scout Bougainville, observing and mapping the terrain, Japanese installations, strength, connecting trails, and general ground conditions.
In the Kieda and Numa Numa areas, seaplanes are used. Offshore, naval parties sound and map the coastline. Depth, average rise and fall with the tide. Submerged reefs, obstacles, and beach depth. And for a period of several weeks, Marine, Navy, and Army personnel roam, photograph, scout, spy upon, and elude an enemy who boasts of his superiority. Photo recon planes roam the length and breadth of the Solomon Group. Trails, rivers, mountains, enemy emplacements, all are photographed. This open space is unsuitable for an airfield because the mountains at either end make it hazardous. But this area is completely suitable and can be bulldozed, planed, filled, graded, surfaced, and in operation within 30 days.
As the information is digested at Guadalcanal, certain facts become fault and certain faults become fact. The coastlines are as much as 10 miles removed from their location on existing maps. Waters charted as safe actually hide the shallow presence of dangerous reefs, shoals, and peaks. The night landings under contemplation have to be abandoned. We will assault in daylight so the ships will not run afoul of these obstructions.
Aerial photographs show no troop movements toward the Empress Augusta Bay area. All enemy activity is centered near his airfields in anticipation of an all-out frontal assault. He is not expecting attack on the East Coast. He has not guessed our intention. Then in October 1943, Coast Watchers get the word through. There are anti-aircraft emplacements and slit trenches being constructed in the Empress Augusta Bay area. From a submarine, we land another patrol. report is reassuring. Routine installations and no concentration of troops in the scheduled landing area. The war plans go on accordingly. We were short on transports, 4 AKAs and 8 APAs. This means the troops will have to go ashore in smaller echelons. Can we risk this? Will enemy strength be sufficient to overwhelm our initial waves?
No. Intelligence reports are re-evaluated. Torquemada Point's geographic location dictates the use of localized units and small detachments.
Can the enemy bring up his reserves in time to destroy our initial beachhead?
No. Existing trails are inadequate, and no military road exists for rapid reinforcement.
Can they reinforce from the sea?
No. Our air cover will obviate that possibility.
Can their fleet reach us in time to jeopardize the operation?
No. It is in Rabaul, 10 hours away. Rehearsals will be held in the New Hebrides Islands at Afati and will continue until the assault and unloading can be accomplished within 6 hours, allowing 4 hours for the safe withdrawal of our craft. Army, Navy, and Marine air squadrons will converge from all existing bases within range of the operation and will be scheduled to give constant maximum protection against anticipated enemy strikes. To inactivate a maximum number of enemy planes, bombing missions will be scheduled in advance of D-Day to destroy both grounded aircraft and runways. On D-Day, naval units will concentrate their fire upon the attended landing areas and strong points. High-level bombing missions will be flown, closely followed by low-level strikes and strafing. The task forces will furnish cover for the amphibious landing. As diversionary measures to screen our real intent, the combined air forces will seek out and engage all Japanese naval units within the area, and a bombing mission will be sent over above. Further confuse and annoy, we will launch a secondary assault at Choiseul. This will draw his attention to the south and prevent his reinforcing the Bougainville area from his southern forces.
Task Unit A1, 3rd Marine Division, reinforced, organized into 4 landing teams, embarks October 13 from Tetere, Guadalcanal. Cargo for each team, 520 tons. From 16 to 20th October, they engage in rehearsals. Maps of their objective are studied, enemy strong points located, and methods evolved for neutralizing them. When each man, in each squad, in each platoon, in each company, knows his part in the operation, they go ashore and put into practice what they have absorbed in theory. Task Unit A2, 9th Marines Reinforced, stages their rehearsal 18 to 25 October. And Task Unit A3, 3rd Defense Battalion, conducts its operations at Guadalcanal 26-29 October.
attack force rendezvous 84 miles west of Guadalcanal at 0740, 31 October. 8 months of planning, evaluating, gathering intelligence, men, supplies, and materiel are over. The admirals, the generals, the strategists of command have finished. With their sweat, they have planned battle. With the unceasing diligence of their skepticism, they have refined it, improved it, reduced its flaws to the lowest possible minimum. From compassion, they have chosen the course which offers the greatest possible chance of survival to their comrades, the officers and men of the Marine Corps who serve under them. From necessity, they have accepted inadequate sinews of war. By placement and superior utilization, they have multiplied their strength 100-fold. Before the Almighty God, who has been, and is, and must ever be the mainstay of our free nation, they bow their heads, thankful for whatever portion He has inspired in their final plan for victory.
After 7 months of rest, training, and rehabilitation, we're leaving New Zealand and its wonderful hospitality. From November 1, we steam north for 2 weeks, then sight another force. This is really big. On D-5, they break out the maps and scale models. The officers show us the enemy defenses. A machine gun is here. There, one of the 4 English 8-inch guns captured at Singapore and transplanted. Here is the airfield. There, the probable Japanese headquarters. Each unit is assigned its objective: how to approach it with minimum loss, how to overcome it in the least possible time. This we understand. Hit, push, shove, overrun. Keep the enemy off balance, maintain pressure against him, and he cannot regroup for damaging counterattacks. The assault plan is sound. The risks are calculated and necessary. The objective is important. But success depends upon the approach. The approach depends upon nature. Nature is a woman, and all women are unpredictable.
Here is your host, General Holland M. Smith, former Commanding General, Fleet Marine Force, Pacific Area, United States Marine Corps.
Tara was the first in a series of amphibious operations which carried United States forces across the Central Pacific to the homeland of Japan. When the Marines landed on Badio Island, Tara's atoll, 20 years of Marine Corps study and work already tested at Guadalcanal and Bougainville were put to an acid test. The ideal defensive barrier has always been one that cannot be demolished. which holds up offensive forces under the unobstructed fire of the defenders, and past which it is impossible to run, crawl, dig, climb, or sail. Tarawa had all of these with its reef. We learned from former residents of Tarawa that certain high tides would cover it with 5 feet of water. That was enough to get the landing boats across with safety to spare. We also learned that these tides were not dependable. Frequent lower tides reduced our safety factor to 2 or 3 feet. This was not enough water to float the boats over the reef. The sensible thing was to use the only vehicle we had, which was capable of crossing, regardless of depth, and that was the amphibious tractor. We were opposed in this, but we lived, slept, planned, practiced, and rehearsed amphibious landings for 20 years, and knew we had to have them. The discussion became somewhat vehement. We said, no Amtraks, no war. And they gave us 125. It wasn't enough, but it was all they could buy, borrow, or steal. We rejected the eastern end because it was too narrow to support troops and supplies. The southern beaches had the heaviest anti-boat obstacles and gun emplacements, and the western beach had all these disadvantages, plus a narrow bottleneck. Intelligence reports also indicated that safe conditions would be better inside the lagoon, which dictated our use of the northern beach. We chose the northern beaches because they offered the best chance to get ashore and gain a foothold. Also, the Japanese were still at work fortifying them, and we surmised that their approaches would not be fully mined or their underwater demolitions as thick. Later, we found this to be true. We knew there were thousands of men on the island. Some estimated 4,000, others 8,000. We knew that Tokyo had boasted that 1 million men could not take it. We knew that casualties would be high. We knew with the cold, brutal logic of war that every enemy killed by the pre-invasion fire would be one fewer to shoot at the Marines as they stormed ashore. So, at Tarawa, we planned a naval and air strike to knock the enemy out of his concrete bunkers, his concrete foxholes, his concrete emplacements, and his concrete reinforced underground positions. We asked for 10 days of naval bombardment by the battleships and their 16-inch rifles. In my opinion, nothing except the atomic bomb has the destructive power of a 16-inch shell fired in a flat trajectory from close range. Unfortunately, the threat of possible action from enemy service craft and planes precluded the Navy's utilization of so much of their ammunition. Had they fired at all at Tarawa and then been surprised by the enemy fleet, it could have been disastrous. They did give us 3 days of naval fire, plus carrier-based plane strikes, which dropped 185 tons of bombs the 2 days before D-Day. It wasn't enough, not nearly enough, but it was the best we could manage at that time. On November the 20th, at 0441, when the Japanese shore batteries opened fire on the fleet, the USS Colorado and the USS Maryland swung their big guns and answered. The Battle of Batio Island, Tarawa Atoll, was underway.
As we board the Amtraks, which are carrying the first 3 waves into the beach, we are bewildered by the strength of the enemy fire. After the days and days of bombing and bombardment, we wonder how anyone can be alive. But someone is. The 8-inch guns captured at Singapore and transplanted here have not been silenced. 3 of the 4 spray the convoy with water and steel from near misses. To escape their fire, the convoy moves, and we mill in circles as H hour is delayed. And then again. And a third time. An hour later, the guns are finally silenced. A small minesweeper moves in to clear a path through the lagoon. And a new threat develops. High-velocity anti-tank and anti-boat guns cut loose. From this beached and gutted hulk, Japanese machine gunners spray our assault wave. We circle some more. We drive them out. Once. Twice. 3 times. Finally, we take drastic measures. One destroyer takes 2 non-fatal hits below the waterline. Smoke, intended to screen our approach from the enemy, fails. The wind is blowing from the wrong direction. Naval aviators give the island and areas near the landing beaches a final pasting. We start in. Nothing is for free at Tarawa, and although shock and concussion keeps the enemy partially off balance until the first 3 waves hit the beach, we shudder at what happens to those who follow. The 4th wave, the men in the boats, hits the reef, and the water is not 5 feet deep as advertised. They pile out and wade. They get it. They take it. But they keep coming. The pier is cleared of the enemy. 1 battalion lands on the beach and is out of contact with headquarters afloat for 24 hours. This is the beach, 12 feet wide, bounded on the north by the Friendly Island. It is enemy-led, which is killing us. On the east, by our wrecked equipment. On the west, ditto. And on the south, by the log seawall. It is excellent cover, but it is also an excellent target. Until we can surmount this wall, drive inward and secure depth of position, we have no place to unload our supplies and artillery, without which we cannot hold our beachhead.
Enemy fire had knocked out so many of the amphibious tractors that we could not mount successive assault waves. To commit any more men to landing boats and the reef would have been murder. So General Julian Smith passed the order not to move in until some of the guns had been silenced or until the cover of night and the hope of a higher tide. The handful ashore were on their own. On board the APAs, Marines, seeing their buddies on this spot, cried, cursed, and beat their fist against steel gunnels in helpless protest. By some miracle, Colonel Shoup got ashore, set up communications, gained cohesion and impetus. We inch forward. This is a new kind of war. We have fought in the jungles and swamps of Guadalcanal, but here, a rock shoots at you. You drop on the sand to dig a foxhole with your belly and hear voices underneath. A log isn't a log. It's a painted cannon barrel. A rat hole turns from black to shiny, and a lead bumblebee sings in your ear, sometimes closer. Our 37 score direct hits and bounce off. A coconut falls and turns out to be a grenade. The enemy is everywhere, above and below.
in front, and even behind. 4,000 of them. Late in the afternoon, a few of our medium tanks managed to reach shore.
That evening, Colonel Shoup radioed, "The issue is still in doubt." Our position was precarious. After a full day's fighting, we held only 2 tiny beach areas of less than 300 yards width and 150 yards at the point of deepest penetration. On the red beaches at the north, we held the pier, a penetration of 50 yards on the east side circle the base and 150 yards to the west. On the green beach, the 3rd Battalion was in a slightly better position, owning some 400 yards, the tactically important point, at about 175 yards of the northern beach. Some artillery had been brought ashore, but was not in use as there was no place to set it up. As night fell on D-Day, many a prayer was uttered for the safety of those ashore. Generals, admirals, officers, non-commissioned officers, and men prayed. They knew that a determined counterattack in force would probably wipe out the beachheads.
On board, we wait. Ashore, our buddies are fighting, and we who would help are helpless. There are no Amtraks to carry us to the beach. Topside, messages come in, calling for naval bombardment to break up any mass concentrations. For fighters to drop fragmentation bombs. We count the enemy gun flashes ashore. We strain to count our answering fire from the beach. It is our only way of knowing how goes the battle. With our amphibious tractors reduced to a skeleton force by enemy gunfire, with another low tide over the reef, we cannot launch another assault wave. If the Marines on the beach are driven into the sea, Tarawa will be lost. Rule 1, amphibious operations. Always have enough landing craft to put your troops ashore. And so we wait, and count the flashes, and wait. We pray, and some curse, softly, reverently, and wait.
Thanks to bombs and naval gunfire which had destroyed the enemy communications, they were never able to launch an all-out counterattack. And our boys, our magnificent Marines, had weathered all the other actions. They had held.
Hungry for lack of supper or breakfast, weary from hours of incessant conflict, thirsty from lack of water, wilted by the baking tropical sun, the Marines continue their attack at daybreak. During the night, enemy snipers and machine gunners swim out and occupy one of our wrecked Amtraks. Several Marines are hit. Then, by 12:45 of D+1, the 3rd Battalion, 2nd Marine Division, has secured all of Green Beach to a depth of 150 yards. Average advance, 6 yards per hour. 9 feet every half hour. 1 inch per minute. The 1st Battalion, 6th Marines, comes in the hard way, the long way, the slow way, but they come. By now, the artillery is in action, and the attack begins to move. Infantry teams go to work. Flamethrowers cover the infantry advance. Grenades are hurled into pockets of resistance. Planes add their support. It is a new kind of war. We write the book as we go. We creep. We crawl. We stalk and are stalked. We advance. We are pinned down. We shoot and are shot. In combat, organization breaks easily. Basic units disintegrate. On Tarawa, colonels commanded squads and were lost. And command passed down to captains, lieutenants, sergeants, corporals, even to PFCs just out of boot camp. They accepted the challenge of leadership, and they were ready.
As one went down, another leader rose to take his place. Here you see private first class, corporal, sergeants doing the deeds which lead them into officer training and their commissions. And having been good enlisted men, they are today good officers, good leaders who know their jobs, because they learned those jobs the hard way, the way you never forget. In the Marine Corps, we are proud of our officers who came up through the ranks.
Finally, at 3:12 on the afternoon of November 23rd, D-Day +3, Major General Julian P. Smith declared Batio Island, Tarawa Atoll secured. The 6th Marines would drive the remaining Japanese units up each vertebrae of the group and wipe them out at Buariki. But Tarawa, key to the Gilberts, was ours.
Since Tarawa had to be fought, its justification was the information we gained that saved lives and increased the efficiency of our landing technique in later operations. The timing and selection of the beaches had been good. Nature and a low tide had almost wrecked us. Tarawa taught us the need for more and heavier naval gunfire and more bombings on specified targets. This Japanese command post, made of concrete and steel, covered with coconut logs and coral, withstood bombs and naval gunfire and had to be taken with bulldozers, flamethrowers, and grenades. The enemy lost 1/3 as many men in that one fortification as we lost on the entire island. Tarawa taught us the value of amphibian vehicles. It tested our mechanical and technical equipment as well as our landing procedure. In subsequent landings, we always had a reserve of Amtraks to get the assault waves ashore. Tarawa taught us that the theories and peacetime maneuvers which we had developed were sound with certain revisions. Stoller taught the Marine Corps that the faith we had in our method of training each man to meet and overcome any kind of personal attack was sound. It taught me that there was nothing soft about the American boy. He's just as strong, just as courageous, just as able, and just as willing as his ancestors have been to perform the impossible feats of uncommon valor.